Hello and welcome to another edition of the Business Buzz. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman. We have a very exciting and interesting show tonight, and a show that really dispels the misnomer that Connecticut's not on the leading edge of many technological innovations. We have two gentlemen here. We have Dr. Stuart Farquharson from Real-Time Analyzers on the show. Welcome to the Business Buzz. And we have Louis Parks from SecureRF. Once again, welcome to the Business Buzz.
Thank you.
As I said in the introduction, that many people in Connecticut and outside the state think of Connecticut as kind of a sleepy, industry, kind of, 19th century kind of business models. But you two gentlemen kind of dispel that misnomer. And Stuart, I'd like you to kind of kick that off and talk a little bit about that in terms of Connecticut really being, very technologically savvy, and also how Connecticut Innovations have helped your organization.
Thanks, Jeff. My company, I started it in 2001, and we've developed portable analyzers. I saw an opportunity. I've been in the analyzer business, chemical analyzer business for quite some time, but there are a lot of applications for portable analyzers, and we bootstrapped the development of that through SBIR money. But every time we did that, we'd get to a certain level of a prototype, but there still would be more that was required to really get a product developed. And Connecticut Innovations, really by way of the SBIR group within that organization, helped us get some bridging money to do that.
Mm-hmm. And how did you become aware of Connecticut Innovation?
It was really through the SBIR group. Mary London and Deb Santi, they've reached out over the years to try and help the SBIR community.
Mm-hmm. And maybe you can tell our viewers a little bit more about your company, Real-Time Analyzers, in terms of what exactly you do, what kind of technology you center upon, and what kind of business models do you have?
Oh, okay, so again, we develop portable chemical analyzers. It's a laser-based spectroscopy device. You direct a laser beam at a sample. The light that interacts it generates some chemical information, and then we use that information to provide a solution. One of the hottest topics that we've been working on is trying to detect improvised explosive devices for the military. Mm-hmm. We're still in the development stage, along with a lot of other companies, of course. But something else that's farther along is analyzing fuel for the Marines. They capture fuel, and the question is, can they put it in their equipment safely and have their equipment not fail? And again, using the same basic technology, we can analyze the fuel chemistry, determine the performance properties, and basically give them a go, no-go answer.
And when you say capture fuel, what exactly does that mean for our viewers out there?
Well, in the current situation in Afghanistan, I think most people realize that it's very challenging to bring fuel into that country. It's a landlocked country, and you have to go through all the mountain passes. In fact, that's why there's all these improvised explosive devices along the roadways. Anything that can reduce that, and also at the front end for the Marines, give them the opportunity to have more mobility. If they come across a farm that has diesel fuel, they can analyze it. Can they use that fuel? Most of their equipment runs off of diesel. So if they can, as they say, continue the fight. So it's important to them.
It's kind of interesting, I think, for many of our viewers in terms of you've been at this for about 10 years. Right. What kind of background did you have in this area that kind of led you along this path?
Kind of varied. I guess out of school, I received a PhD, went the professor track for a little while, then kind of bailed out when I found out I could make a fair amount of money working for Dow Chemical. So I did that, and my job there was to redesign analyzers to put out in the field. So I learned how to make analyzers very rugged. Mm-hmm. And then I started to learn about SBIRs. One of my colleagues from graduate school was telling me he had a small business and he was being successful developing products that way. So I thought, hey, I might as well try that myself.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned in terms of your organization, your company, having the technology or working on the technology to detect those roadside bombs, in terms of helping our troops. How far along is that technology?
That's really still in the early stages. We've demonstrated that the technology works. So the biggest challenge is that right now we have to be very close to a sample. So one early solution is to attach this to one of those remotely controlled robots. You see the treaded ones, mm-hmm. and so you could look under a vehicle, say at a checkpoint. But ultimately, they'd like something that you could basically identify something 100 yards away, and we're a ways from having that solution.
Through laser technology?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and Mr. Park Lewis, welcome back to the Business Buzz. I know you've been on the radio side of our enterprises, and maybe you can talk a little bit about SecureRF, how long you've been in business, and how did it all come about?
Sure. So I'm the benefactor of having several good partners. Our company's been around just over 7 years now, and I have 3 partners who are mathematician cryptographers who have developed new security or cryptography protocols that actually fit in places where the current security we use doesn't. A lot of people listening to the show probably don't realize that the security you use, whether you're on eBay buying something or doing online banking, is at a minimum 30 to 40 years old, and in fact in some cases older than that, which is secure and it still works, but doesn't fit on the small chips that you find in a lot of sensors and wireless sensor networks that people want to use today. And specifically, we're now focusing on identification and authentication technologies targeting anti-counterfeiting. So my partners, 3 mathematician cryptographers, as I mentioned, in the New York area, have in essence invented the first linear-based cryptography, which simply means to your audience that it runs 10 or 15 years faster and more efficient than the security that exists today. And in reality, that is one of the hurdles that has prevented good security from permeating throughout our industry. So for example, the credit cards in your wallet have no security on them because it would take maybe 1/10 of a second to process that security in the back end. And our networks are so busy, so loaded, they don't have that resource. Our technology reduces that by several hundredfold and would allow security to be used in places where it can't today.
Well, that's kind of shocking to me as a layperson that you're saying the security technology that's out there now is as much as 40 years old. And to me, that also kind of suggests that it's really not, no pun intended, apt for today's mobile devices.
Actually, mobile devices are a challenge. As I had mentioned, I brought with, most people think of a laptop as a mobile device. In our particular case, and I don't know if they can see it, this is the mobile device or computer on the other side that we deal with, which is, in this particular case, it's called a near field communication or NFC chip. Other cousins to this are things like UHF, RFID or RFID tags. The technology that you find in your Easy Pass or your car key is, people think is secure because you can't see it or touch it, but in fact it's relatively insecure so far. And again, it's primarily the physics where the security technology that fits very nicely in the browser, so you are safe buying things online and doing banking, does not fit when you have a low resource, as you can see, no battery power there, coming from a mobile phone or reader trying to move data over the air.
And in terms of security, again, as a layperson, what are we talking about in terms of your companies and other technologies out there? What exactly do they do in terms of monitoring security?
Well, usually when I tell people we do security, they say, oh, you encrypt data, which is in fact something we do. But it actually starts before that. It starts with identification. Who are you? Because if I couldn't see you and you sent me an email, how do I know you're Citibank? And then how do I authenticate that you are Citibank or this is really my account and not some website that's just there to collect data from me? So
that's called phishing, isn't it? When you get emails from a supposed financial institution, but in fact it's not. You give them your data and all hell could break loose.
Correct. And there's many things: cloning, phishing, spoofing. I mean, there's a variety of threats. Once you become electronic and I don't have the ability to authenticate you by seeing you again, as I did a few years ago, it becomes difficult to authenticate. And so there are cryptographic protocols that use methods that have been developed over the years to do that electronically. And what we have done is we've advanced it so it can fit on small devices, so we can embed it in products or in packaging. So for example, the pharmaceuticals you're buying, which start off someplace in India, legitimately, in a village you can't pronounce, are really the products that Pfizer or Bristol Myers tells you they are. You put brake pads on your car, you assume they're brake pads from the dealership, which they are, but they come from a legitimate manufacturer.
So
you
actually,
don't know.
you deal with, in terms of, you also deal with piracy as well, correct?
Well, we deal with piracy in the sense that we provide technologies to authenticate or ensure that you're using the real thing. So, but we're, in terms of preventative, that's probably for Customs and Border Protection, and for others who do, overt acts to prevent pirating. But we create a hurdle for the counterfeiters to put illegitimate product in the supply chain. And even the Food Safety Act, which was brought in last year in Congress, and the FDA is now working on the means of how that'll be implemented. A lot of our food comes from outside our borders. It needs to be monitored and protected. You need to know that it hasn't been altered or any way, much like a car, brake pad, except in this case, obviously, much more critical. So again, the ability to authenticate that this is really what Dole sent into the country and should be on your supermarket shelf is very important.
And that's in with a chip?
And this is the technologies that we provide on sensors like that or larger that can do other things to monitor the pedigree or the authenticity of the product they're attached to.
So when it goes through distribution, because of your technology, the vendor, the distributor, the manufacturer can monitor the authenticity of the product.
Irrefutably, correct.
Excellent. And I would definitely think that this type of technology requires a lot of sophistication. Was it difficult recruiting the level of sophistication you need in the Connecticut area for your company?
I mean, yes and no. As I say, we operate in the tri-state. We're based here. We have some great embedded software engineers, Connecticut-based, who are working with us, and the core of our team, including intellectual property, is here. And we hope to grow it. It's there are some larger technology companies who we look to work with, or who have engineering staff and sophistication of this level, and we've been getting a very, very good reception.
Interesting. That certainly is not something you often think about when the traditional person views Connecticut. You're kind of at the leading, both you and Stuart are kind of the cutting edge in terms of technology, aren't the both of you?
I'd like to think so.
And in terms of your relationship, Louis, with Connecticut Innovations, how have they helped your organization?
Well, specifically, it's been the SBIR folks who are now managed or under the roof of Connecticut Innovations. So the SBIR program in particular has been critical in the sense that we had a start in 2008 and 9 in terms of this technology in a very difficult business climate. And it was actually through the SBIR program that we're funded by a U.S. Air Force project, which began this, and then later, and today as we speak, by the National Science Foundation, where we're actually funded through what's called a Phase 2, and actually an additional grant to develop anti-counterfeiting technologies for the pharmaceutical industry specifically. So again, the two women who run the office, actually there's more there now for SBIR, have been critical to assisting us in getting these grants, and it's in fact those grants that have led us to a significant project that we were just told last week would be coming in from the Department of Defense, which we actually hope to actually run through the SBIR program if possible. But the funding has been allotted, and we're very excited about that. So in addition to our commercial activities, it's allotted a lot of credibility to what we're doing in the market.
And I'll also ask the both of you gentlemen, in terms of Connecticut Innovations has been very helpful. SBIR has been paramount in terms of your success. How about overall the state of Connecticut? Have they been a positive resource for your endeavors, Stuart?
Well, it's kind of funny you should ask that. I grew up here in Connecticut, East Haven, went to school here. Then I went to graduate school all the way out in Texas. Worked a lot of different places in the country, eventually came home. And one of the biggest challenges, though, in running a company like probably the same for you, is that we actually need fairly intelligent people. And I've hired people, actually half my staff is probably 50% UConn and the other half is Yale. So, so the schools and the students that come from those